As we've discussed plenty of times here before, cheating in sports has a long and rich history. There's no end to the creativity and tenacity of athletes in the face of competition and winning. In the world of cycling, you may know about one former champion that shall not be named and what they did to win, but he definitely was not the first. This is what you don't know about the Tour de France of 1904. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports, where we delve into the forgotten stories, teams, and athletes of sports history and question widely held takes on today's sports. I'm Blake, and this is Matt.
Howdy.
I'd lower my chair for a second. And today, we're taking a time machine all the way back to 1904 for the second time in this show's history, well, specifically 1904, to chat about another global sporting event, or competition, if you will, filled with controversy and sabotage. If this sounds familiar to you, thank you for listening to one of our first ever releases. If it doesn't sound familiar, then you should go back and listen because it's hilarious. And this event is almost as hilarious as that one. Today we're going to be talking about the 1904 Tour de France. Before we get started though, Matt, what non-Big Four sporting event do you most look forward to each year? And for people outside the United States, I'm saying not baseball, not hockey, not basketball, and not football. So some of you probably don't like any of those, but we are fans of them here. But go ahead.
First of all, if this story does not involve someone intentionally ingesting arsenic as a performance enhancer, then I don't know. It's got to. But second, to answer the question, I told you I thought that I could answer this without hesitation, but actually I am torn between two things. One is a combination of events, and it's the Sunday before Memorial Day here in the United States, where Formula One races in Monaco, the Indianapolis 500 is in Indy, and then NASCAR races in Charlotte for the Coke 600. Two of them, the most important races in those series, the third, one of that. But that doesn't actually answer the question. That's a combination of events, so that's technically cheating, like the cyclists, I'm imagining, did. And so I'll narrow it down.
Starting off on a great foot.
Yeah, I gotta channel the cheat. Not gonna pick the Daytona 500, but I will pick the Southern 500 on Labor Day weekend. Also a NASCAR race. Since we can't pick one of the big four, I'll go there.
I think the reason I asked this question is because the Tour de France is a really, really incredible event that happens on a yearly basis, and it happens every July. I don't know. I can't imagine riding in the temperatures we have here every day for the distances and the speeds that they ride over so long. I just can't imagine doing that. But if I had to look forward to, a non-Big Four sporting event other than the Tour de France, yearly event, I would say like a UEFA Champions League final or something like that. Like that's one of the most watched sporting events in the world. If it's not just a one-time thing, but it's like a series of sporting events that culminate into one thing, similar to how Tour de France has stages that culminate into the larger tour. I would say maybe the World Cup, but that happens every 4 years, or we have to wait an additional 6 months because for some reason they gave it to Qatar and they can't play in the summer, and so we're still waiting. Thank you, FIFA. Anyway.
Way to go, FIFA.
I'm not going to get started down that road right now. Anyway.
Legal drug cartel. Anyway, sorry.
Essentially. Anyway. So, again, this all happened. Everything we're going to talk about today, most of everything we're going to talk about today, happened in 1904, which means that media coverage of the time, we've talked about this before, media coverage of the time was terrible. Records of this event have been lost. Actually, records of this event actually got lost. They were taken out of one place in a box due to World War II when people were moving around all over Europe, and those documents were never found again. And so there actually are particular documents that happened for the earliest renditions of the Tour de France that will never be seen again, or at least have not been seen to this day. Maybe they'll pop up one day. But a lot of the specific events that I'm going to talk about, the specific things that happened during this race, came from translated newspaper reports of the time. And so they've passed hands probably, I don't know how many times. They've been translated. And so if they sound ridiculous, they might just be. They might just be ridiculous and maybe slightly exaggerated. Or, as we like to think on this show, it's completely true and we're going to laugh because it's hysterical.
Everything that happened is true.
Got it.
It just did. We know it. Yeah. We were there.
Yeah. Okay, so the beginning happened on July 2nd, 1904. This was the first day of the second edition of the Tour de France. The first edition taking place in 1903. The 1904 edition would take place over the exact same route that the 1903 race took place over. It began in Montgeron. Did I say that right? A suburb of Paris in France. The reigning champion from 1903... The reigning champion from 1903, Maurice Garin, was set to repeat. He has a long and storied history of cycling, including many ridiculous endurance races on a bicycle. And so he was the favorite to win the first one. He is the favorite to repeat. But I said that everything was the same from 1903. There was one difference which might have changed the way that people looked at the 1904 race, but not really. The only difference was that the race took place in 6 stages, 6 individual races that culminated into the entire tour. And in 1903, you could sign up for just one stage. In 1904, they did not allow that anymore. And so if you signed up, you were expected to race all 6 races. Now, the distances are just ridiculous. They were ridiculous then, and they're even more ridiculous now. In 03 and 04, 6 stages took place over 23 days, which means you're racing every 4 days or so, right? That race course covered over 1,500 miles in essentially 6 days of racing. 1,500 miles in 6 days. The winning time of the 1904 race, so a little bit of foreshadowing, was just over 96 hours. That means they moved at an average of 15 miles an hour on bicycle. For those doing the math at home, that means that each stage took approximately 16 hours to complete.
And they're going 15 miles an hour.
Yes.
For 16 hours. That's a whole day. Oh my gosh.
Yep. That means they're covering just over 250 miles per day. To put that into perspective, this year's Tour de France course is set just over 2,000 miles, but it's set over 21 stages. So 2,000 divided by 21 instead of 15 divided by 6. Yeah. This year's Tour de France averaged 99 miles per stage.
Oh my God. Oh man. So it's slightly shorter. You're going faster, obviously.
A lot faster.
And just from technology and advances in anatomy. Anatomy? No. I guess our anatomy is
training, specialization, technology.
So I can't get over 16 hours per stage.
Mm-hmm.
So the race was, I can't do it. 14 hours longer than it is now.
Yep.
That's a whole day of riding.
Yeah. In 2021, because the 2022 tour is happening as we record, And the 2021 version, the winner finished in just under 83 hours. So like you said, it's 13, 14 hours shorter. They're moving at an average pace of 25 and a half miles per hour on a bicycle. They will reach speeds going downhill, especially, and in the group or solo sometimes. They will eclipse 50 miles an hour on a bicycle going downhill. It's absolutely absurd.
Just don't hit anything.
They do. They crash. They crash sometimes, and it is not like riders riding off the sides of mountains because I mean it's They run into each other because they're running on these tiny little slick tires that are like an inch wide, like as wide as your thumb. I mean, it's amazing what they're doing. Like for example, I have a road bike that's 8 years old that was like second tier to the bottom when I bought it 8 years ago, and it weighs 20 pounds, which is not a lot. The bikes that they're riding on today might weigh 10, 8 pounds, and they're holding like, I mean, somewhere between 150, 200 pound grown men. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Who are pedaling enough to go, well, I mean downhill, but they're pedaling enough to go 15, 20, 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, they're averaging 25 and a half miles an hour on flat ground. I mean, it's nuts.
Absorbing a lot of force for no weight. That's a scientific marvel.
That's all it is. It's power per, like the output of power by how much you weigh.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. Anyway, to the first stage. It starts off immediately, folks. I mean, the ridiculous starts now. Okay, the first rider fell just a few kilometers into the race. They broke a finger when they hit the ground, and they had to abandon. Okay, that should be a sign. That should be a sign that this is happening quick, fast, and in a hurry, and there's no end in sight.
The first guy across the line broke his finger right after the start.
Yep, flew a few kilometers fell, tried to catch himself and broke his finger and had to quit right there. A second rider, about 100 kilometers in. Now, I mean, these stages are happening like 400 kilometers at a time. About a quarter of the way through the first stage, another rider ended up breaking his bike. Would somehow find another bicycle and would catch back up to the group.
He stole some kid's bike off.
He probably did.
That's
he grabbed the first bike he saw and joined the race. It came back to the race and caught up to the peloton or the main group. I'm not talking about the stationary bikes that all of you probably are imagining right now. The peloton is known as the main group of riders in a bicycle race. And so they weren't riding stationary.
Yeah, I was going to say that wouldn't be hard to catch that. I mean,
they're not going anywhere.
Roll up to somebody's house, you caught the peloton.
Another rider ended up falling about an hour behind. He fell, he bloodied his face, and then somehow continued. He didn't quit, but he continued the race covered in blood, like blood dripping off his face. Two riders, Maurice Garin, who was the favorite and the reigning champion, and another rider, Lucien Potier, they rode away from the main group. So they were off in front of the peloton by themselves, only to be attacked by four masked men in a car. Four masked men jumped out in front of them and attacked them to try and slow them down. They still finished the stage in first and second place. I don't know how. I don't know how.
A highly publicized bicycle race with a very well-known route through the French countryside is actually, so I get that they were probably just trying to slow them down for somebody else, but it's a great way to rob somebody too. I don't know that they would have anything on them worth robbing.
Their bicycle, if it was worth enough.
But they also don't have anything to defend themselves on that bike. So you know exactly where they're going to be. Just get them.
Well, right. And it was the exact same route as the year before. So everyone knew exactly where they would be and about when they were going to be there. So it wouldn't be hard to catch up to them.
Interesting.
So they finished first and second.
First and second. Oh my God.
They were so far ahead that they were attacked, got back on their bikes and finished the time. Three
Joey
riders.
Chestnut-esque.
Yeah. Goat
Put
status
the guy in a
right
headlock. Yeah. Still winning.
3 riders were disciplined after this stage. One rider was fined 500 francs for having a non-racer follow him on a bicycle. Basically, he had a support rider, and that was not legal. And so he was fined by the race director. 2 others were fined, or excuse me, one was fined and one was disqualified. One was caught riding in the slipstream of a car, which you can't do. And one got caught resting in a car for about 45 minutes. That you also can't do that either. And so they were both kicked out. And then yet another person was disqualified during the stage, not at the end. They got caught during the stage getting helped by a non-participant of the race, which again, there's no, like, if you watch it today, there are cars driving behind the peloton with a bunch of bikes stacked on the top, and there's like a medical car, so like if someone falls, they can get back on their bike. The medical car will ride up beside you and like patch you up while you're rolling. You can hold on to the side of the medical car, and they'll like pull you along the track until they patch you up or bandage you up or do whatever you need to do. None of this existed then. I mean, this is just the second edition of the race. And so none of those rules were in place. But one controversy that would come up later is that Maurice Garin would request food from a race official during the race. This was also not allowed. But the official gave him food anyway. And I guess to anyone's best guess, this official did not want to be the reason that the race favorite was disqualified or kicked out of the race, or fell off because he was hungry and couldn't finish the race. And so he decided to give him food. And spectators noticed. It got around quickly that Garin, the favorite and the leader and all that stuff, essentially cheated. He broke the rules like all these other people did and was not punished or anything. And so spectators took notice of this action, and I ain't saying, I'm just saying this is foreshadowing, folks, for what's to come.
I find it interesting that riding in the slipstream of a car is the thing that is illegal. Like I would assume the car, just like today, some running and cycling world records can get disqualified if you've got a pace car that's helping you pace yourself. Like I would assume that would have been the problem with the car. But for them to recognize that riding behind a vehicle gives you a slipstream and makes your task a little bit easier is actually kind of cool that they were able to understand that. And yeah, so my man giving Garin some food. I don't know. You got to do better. You got to look around, make sure nobody's watching. You can't just give somebody food out in the open. Come on, my man.
He asked for it. Maybe he should have been disqualified as an official. But
yes.
whatever.
Yeah, the official was bad, not Garin. He just asked for food. He didn't know he couldn't get it. The official knew he couldn't get it.
He's just hungry.
Yeah.
So, stage 2. Don't ask why. I couldn't find an answer. But this stage 2 of the 1904 Tour de France started at midnight.
What it was? A bunch of Frenchmen were sitting around drinking some wine, and they said, "I'm not going to do a French accent because that's terrible." But they said, "Hey, look here. It would be great if we started this deal at midnight."
Apparently, for some reason, yeah. Well, they were riding in the dark anyway. Unless you started at 6. If you started at 6 a.m. and it took 16 hours, you're not finishing until 10 o'clock at night. So at some point, you are riding at night. But apparently, this stage 2, something happened, and the race director wanted to postpone the start of this stage by 2 hours. So instead of starting at midnight, they started at 2 a.m. And the riders just took off anyway. They didn't want to wait, and so they organized and started the race early, on time, but earlier than the race officials wanted. A local rider took off from stage 2 in the lead. They were riding near his hometown, so he had a bunch of fans who knew he was in the race and all of that stuff nearby. And as soon as he went by, about 200 fans from his hometown jumped onto the course and blocked it so that all the other riders couldn't get through. This basically caused like a mosh pit or a melee of some sort. Maurice Green, the favorite and the leader, injured his hand somehow trying to fight through the blockade. He ended up finishing this entire stage steering with one hand, steering a bicycle with one hand. Another rider was knocked unconscious and had to forfeit. The crowds were so bad that police and race officials responded, and the only way to break up the crowds was to fire guns into the air to make the crowds disperse. So that's terrible. And after this incident cleared, well on down the race course, a bunch of nails and broken glass were thrown out onto the road. This flattened a lot of bike tires, as you could probably imagine, again in an attempt to allow the hometown kid who was leading the race to win the stage and possibly win the whole thing. But again, in this time, mechanical assistance was not allowed during the race for any other riders. And so you either forfeited because your bike got damaged, you stole a bike, if you could find one, to finish the race, or you had to ride the rest of the way on flat tires and fix it after the race. So it's a whole different world now. If you know what they do today, it's completely different. But once they finally got to the end, the hometown kid didn't win. Unfortunate. But there was lots of confusion at the finish line. And because of all the confusion, and there were riders complaining, they were demanding that the stage results would be canceled because of all the ridiculousness that was happening. The race officials didn't get accurate finish times for any of the riders. And so I guess they just had to guess. I guess they had to approximate like how long it took them to finish, because immediately upon arrival, everybody was complaining, and so they had to guess about what time everybody finished just to compile the results. But imagine like we get like court stormers and pitch stormers and stuff like that, but imagine like a group blocking like a racetrack. Like fans coming out of the stands or like on a road course or whatever. Imagine like F1, somebody's coming around the corner at 100 miles an hour and there's 200 people standing in the road.
That one ends differently than this. But that's stupid game, stupid prizes area there. But
that would be terrible.
But good for him losing the race, because what are you doing, people? In our last episode about the Great Triumvirate, Harry Varden had that 72 hole like heads up 1v1 tournament, and he intentionally didn't want to play it at his opponent's home course because he was afraid exactly of stuff like this. And I didn't say anything about it because I didn't actually think people would do ridiculous things like this in the 1900s, but I am wrong. The early 1900s were apparently lit more than anything else, so nothing uncommon to just throw your empty drink bottle out onto the course and some nails and whatever else and just tear it up.
Oh, it gets better.
It's a team sport, cycling. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Today it is, then it was not, but fans are not on the teams today, so that's the difference. But the ridiculousness continues and possibly gets worse. Stage 3 begins, and of course all the riders are upset, and the race officials are confused, and no one really knows how to handle any of what's going on. But stage 3 sees more fans barricading the roads and trying to attempt certain cyclists from continuing or finishing the stage. Others from the crowd threw rocks at the cyclists. They were throwing rocks at the competitors, which is just crazy to me. But multiple riders get injured in this. One of them had to locate a new bike after his was damaged by pitch invaders, if you will, course invaders. He ended up having to go steal somebody's bike and finish the race. More nails, more broken glass. And I did read this time that maybe the riders got smarter this time, and instead of trying to, once they saw the obstacle in the middle of the road, instead of trying to drive over it and how that flattens your tires, they hopped off and walked through these parts in an attempt to save their bikes and save their equipment and save their tires. And so maybe that worked. But I mean, we're halfway through the race at this point. At the end of this stage, at the end of stage 3, we're halfway through this race. And I mean, dozens of riders have had to quit due to injury, and some of them quit just because the race was way harder than they thought it was. Just a small percentage of the riders were even professional cyclists. The rest were just bike enthusiasts, and they thought it would be cool. It doesn't have like the professionalism that it has today, where you have to be like the 0.0001% of all bike riders to get in it today. It was like a quarter professionals, and the rest were just like avid bike riders. And so some of them dropped out because they weren't ready. Some of them for injury. Some of them for mechanical issue. I mean, it's just, we're only halfway through though. That's the best part. Is there is more.
I love it. I love it. I love the drama of it. I don't love any of what's happened so far from a sports standpoint. I've got to imagine walking part of the course is probably also against the rules. Like, I get that they did it, and maybe it's not, but you would assume in a cycling race they would want you to cycle the race. But I don't know, right? Like, I don't even know now if you walk part of it, if it would be a big deal. Yeah, to have 3 days. I mean, imagine waking up on like the 4th morning and saying, okay, all right, now today I have to dodge people and nails and glass and also my fellow riders and just do the job that I came here to do. Yeah, it's got to be getting annoying and frustrating.
Oh, it's probably infuriating. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine just wanting to compete in a sport that you love and then getting handicapped like this. It's probably ridiculous, and it's not even the weather, right? Like, if cycling's an outdoor sport for the most part, and so if it was weather that was delaying or something else like non-human controlled, it might be different. If it was out of humans' control that the race was happening the way that it was, it'd be different. But like today, they ride in the rain during the tour. They actually sometimes have to ride over cobblestones in France in the rain. People are wiping out all over the place. It's scary, but I mean, if you can't get mad at that because everyone's facing the same conditions, right? Maurice Garin was being attacked specifically because no one wanted him to repeat. Yeah, I bet I would lose it. But anyway, so we're about halfway through. We are halfway through the race here, and so now it is trivia time.
Love it.
Because I know you are not an avid watcher of the Tour de France. We are not going to quiz your cycling knowledge today. What we are going to quiz
Lance Armstrong, Floyd Landis. Got it.
You can't say the first name. He is the rider not to be named for his transgressions in the sport.
Okay,
so I will cut that out. I'm just kidding. I'm not cutting that out. But, so anyway. Maurice Garin in this story is well on his way to repeating for his back-to-back Tour de France titles, and he would be the first person, if he were to win this, to win back-to-back titles in this event. You don't know where. Do you know where I'm going with this? You don't know where I'm going with this.
No, but it's going to be hard.
You don't know where I'm going to this. So I'm keeping this in American sports, and I want you to tell me the teams or the team in each of the the American Big Four sports to win back-to-back championships.
Oh my God! Okay, all right.
I will give you a really quick hint that may or may not help.
Okay. Love hints.
3 of the 4 are still in the same place with the same mascot. If that makes sense.
Okay, that's good. So 1 has moved, but 3 of the 4
has moved. 1 has moved, but 3 are in the same city with the same mascot.
Okay, I think. Okay, so for instance, for the NFL. Are we doing Super Bowls?
We're talking Super Bowls. Yep. NFL will be Super Bowl championships. Yeah.
So we're gonna use some questions to make sure I don't screw this up. For the NFL team, for the NFL team. Okay. Did Brett Favre play for the NFL team?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, it's the Green Bay Packers were the first back-to-back Super Bowl winners.
They won Super Bowls 1 and 2.
Yes.
So that might be the easiest of the 4.
Bart Starr was the MVP of those. All right, so from there, it gets infinitely harder.
Yeah, that was the easy one.
Which sport does the team that moved come from?
The NBA.
Okay. How many times has that team moved?
That is a good question. So, as a franchise, yes. They were founded in 1947.
Okay.
Let me think. How do I explain this without like telling you where all they've been and and all of that stuff? They were founded in one city.
Mm-hmm.
And then I believe they made one move to where they are right now.
Oh, they've only moved once. Okay.
I think so. Someone wants to fact check that later and make us sound stupid, then that's fine. But I think they've only moved once.
I don't want to ask for the cities. That's too easy.
That would be very easy. Yeah, you could ask. You could say who.
Easy, but
you could ask like the first one you asked.
So like I did the first one. All right.
Did this player play for this team?
All right, we're gonna set aside the NBA one for a second.
Yep.
In baseball,
You could ask what league they play in.
Is it an American League team?
Negative.
No, that wouldn't make any sense. Okay.
The National League team. Still there.
What division in the National League?
Let's see. Currently they play in the Central Division, I believe. Yes. They play in the Central Division.
If you were looking at it, okay, how about this? Yeah, if you were looking at it on a map, would you consider that to be the central part of the United States where that team is located, though?
Central U.S.? So when I think Central U.S., I think Kansas, because I have always heard that Lebanon, Kansas
somewhere
is
there.
The center.
Like the central, yeah.
Not quite. No, you have to go. This is more Midwest.
Oh, okay. I don't think this team existed though. So I don't.
Oh, the team that you're thinking?
No, my God.
I'll give you the years.
Well, no.
You want to know the 2 years?
It's like 1900 something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1907 and 1908. 1908 is a somewhat specific year for this team because
yeah. Did the team have some sort of curse associated with it? Perhaps with a billy goat of some sort?
The Billy Goats.
Yeah, okay.
That's not the team
Cubs.
name. That is the Chicago Cubs. They won in 07 and 08 and then did not win again until 2016.
I had the Pirates in my mind, and then when we said that it wasn't really the center, I was like, well, it could be the Cardinals. But I was like, the Cardinals weren't. Yeah, so, okay. So we got 2, and I think I've used like 5 questions, maybe 6.
I'm not counting. It's fine.
Good. All right, so the NHL one's going to be the absolute hardest, and I'm just assuming it's an original 6 team, but which one of those I've got no way of knowing. How do we narrow this down?
Here.
Is it in America or in Canada?
Canada.
Is it the team with the most championships?
I believe so.
The Montreal Canadiens.
The Canadiens, yeah.
La Habitat, whatever that is in French.
I don't know, but yes, they are one of the original 6. They are the oldest. They are the longest operating is the way that I should say it. They are the longest continuously operating professional ice hockey team, apparently worldwide. Not just in the NHL, but like
just anywhere.
Everywhere.
Russia. Yeah.
Pretty sick.
All right. The NBA, I sat on the NBA one for a second, and I think I know who it is because it's only moved one time, and I know they were an original franchise. So, was Grant Hill drafted by and played for this team at the beginning of his career?
Grant Hill, the famous
Duke legend.
The famous Duke legend.
Yeah.
He has not played for this team.
Okay, I was thinking like Fort Wayne Pistons ended up being the
that's
Fort
a good
Wayne
guess.
ended up becoming the Detroit Pistons. I thought that was it because they were an original team.
That is a good guess.
A team that's moved once.
If that fact is wrong, I apologize, but I do not believe they have moved. I do not believe that they have moved more than once.
Yeah,
that would throw everything.
You blew it.
That would screw everything up.
Could I have? How many championships have they won overall?
Ooh. So this might give it away.
Yeah.
This franchise has won 17 NBA titles.
So the Minneapolis / Los Angeles Lakers.
The Minneapolis Lakers won the first back-to-back NBA championships in 1952 and 1953.
With George Mikan.
That was the qualifier. There was a qualifier in there somewhere because they also won in 49 and 50, but that technically was not the NBA. 49 was the BAA. Yeah. 50 became the NBA. They skipped 51 and then won actually 3 straight, 52 through 54. See?
I like it.
Yep. You had it.
Okay. I did. I was there.
That was good.
I was also about to be like the Syracuse Nationals, and that's not it.
Not like, any of those would have been good guesses in my mind. So I applaud you, sir. Okay. Right. Stage 4. You want to know what happens in stage 4? Do you want to guess? Do you want to guess?
Yes. The monsoon of epic proportions. A rare European hurricane.
Literally or figurative hurricanes?
Both.
Not the Carolina ones, but
yes.
Okay. Well, apparently, in all of my research, stage 4 went by without a hitch. No course invaders, no sabotagers, at least specifically noted. Now, again, this happened almost 120 years ago, and how many things went unreported during that time?
Well, and you've had 2 days of blockades and nails, so anything short of blockades and nails is not going to make the newspaper.
We're getting boring. We're getting boring.
Like, we had a 5-rider crash. It's not a big deal today.
No issues.
We're fine about that. What do you mean?
We're fine. Stage 4 goes by great. Nobody hurt, to my knowledge. Stage 5, though, we're back to the fun stuff. Apparently, there were more nails and such thrown out into the roadway, and again, because there was no mechanical assistance during the Tour de France at this point. One rider finished the stage's last 40 kilometers on 2 flat tires. And I don't know if any of y'all have ever tried to ride a bike with 1 flat tire, but if you did, it was in like the last quarter century to a half century. Imagine like a steel bicycle that probably weighed like 60 pounds 120 years ago on 2 flat tires would have been so sad. So sad.
I don't even know.
So sad. Multiple riders were disqualified during the stage for taking rides on trains. They were just train enthusiasts, and they just couldn't help themselves, you know?
Okay. Okay. Like if you were riding beside a train track and the train's coming by and you just like hobo your way onto it, right? As it's moving.
Yep.
I get it. If you're getting to a train station or adjacent to a train station and hopping on that thing and then hopping off, you've got to assume that there's an official at the train station. Like if you're going to put an official anywhere on the route, you would assume hey, let's put some guys at the train station just to make sure that nobody's doing this. Just that would be a good spot for people.
Mm-mm.
Why are you getting on trains? What are you doing?
They're making up a lot of time. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, they are.
But again, this is probably like subpar drama at this year's Tour de France. Maurice Garin continues to be in the lead at the end of stage 5. Stage 6, somehow, some way, miraculously, had no major issues.
Yeah, because they were getting close to the finish line.
They might have just been like, all right, I think we're done here. I just want this to be over. So stage 6 goes by, no large, humongous, gigantic issues. 27 riders completed all 6 stages. And finally, after all this turmoil and craziness, a rightful winner had finally been determined. Maurice Garin had defended his title as back-to-back Tour de France champions. Now, what you all didn't see when I just said that, I put air quotes around the word rightful. Why is that? It's because the French Cycling Federation started an investigation among all the complaints that all the riders and the spectators and the officials had during the race. They waited, this happened in July, of course. They waited until November 1904 to open an investigation on all of these complaints, from the riders to witnesses. They interviewed dozens of people. Ultimately, it led to 29 riders being punished for transactions. And that includes riders that finished and riders that didn't. Plenty. I mean, you can cheat and still not be good enough to finish this race. So, some finished, some didn't, but 29 total riders got punished. And the bombshell in this entire thing, the first 4 finishers, the top 4 finishers of the Tour de France, who actually, among them, won all 6 of the stages, were disqualified. First place through 4th place, cut. Like the man that shall not be named, title stripped, never there, never existed, gone from existence. Yeah, gone. So who won the Tour de France? Just some 19-year-old kid named Henri Cornet. He was the 5th place finisher. He would eventually be declared the winner after all of this ridiculousness, even though he's not immune, even though apparently he caught a lift during the race by car at some point. I don't know. Maybe that's just like a vengeful allegation. We're talking about 1904 here. I don't kill the messenger, okay? But apparently,
if we're going back and investigating all this, and we find out my man's riding a car, we're disqualified. They don't have a problem disqualifying people. Why is he immune? You win.
They didn't cut him. They gave him.
Doreen had some food in stage 1. He's gone, but you got pulled along by a vehicle, rode in a vehicle, whatever you were doing, and you're good. You're good to go.
Somehow,
you're the champ.
I don't know. So of the, I believe I saw 87 riders who began on July 2nd, 1904. After the race, and then after all the disqualifications, there are only 15 riders named on the final results list.
And even some of them cheated.
That's like a sixth of the thing, it's like a sixth of the field. And at least one of them has been alleged to have also cheated, but not been punished. It's also speculated that one of the top 4 disqualified finishers, they stuck a string to a cork, and then the other end of the string to a car, and held the cork in their mouths between their teeth, and was pulled by a car, by a string. So that is probably one of the reasons why one of the top 4 got disqualified. But
that sounds painful.
I don't know. I don't know what teeth were made of back then, but I don't think they're made of the same thing today. Because
don't aggravate the guy driving the car, because he could just gun it and ruin your face.
It's like a terrible, like when you're a kid and you tie the string to the doorknob and you have to pull the loose tooth kind of thing. This was intentional and all to win, all for the glory, all for the glory of winning. Some writers also alleged during this investigation that other writers put itching powder in their shorts because that just makes for a great time. And you mentioned right off the top that you would not be happy if rat poison was not mentioned. I did read that not during the 1904 edition of the Tour de France, but during an earlier race, Maurice Garin had a very similar cocktail that he used to complete a much longer and much longer endurance cycling race that did involve strychnine, the rat poison.
That was what it was. Strychnine, yeah.
Yeah. So
you're not in an endurance event if you're not taking rat poison. So
even today, I mean, who doesn't do that?
I popped some before the show.
He's hit like one. Y'all can't see him, but one of his eyes is like twitching uncontrollably, and it's kind of scary. Anyway, the issues were so bad during this race that the race organizer nearly permanently canceled the race forever. And you could probably imagine why. Like this edition was probably just miserable for him and all the race officials to keep track of everything. And he had lots of issues with the French Cycling Federation. I'm going to try and pronounce his name. Henri Desgrange. I don't know. That might be right.
I think we're 4 for 4 at this point.
Henri Desgrange. All right. So Henri, the race official and the founder of the Tour de France, had lots of issues with the French Cycling Federation. After this, really before this too, but after this especially, he was really not a fan that they waited 4 months after the race to start this investigation, just to hand the trophy off to somebody so long after the end of the race. He also had already disciplined some of the riders. Like if you remember me mentioning after stage 1, a few riders were fined for their actions during the race. That was him. That was Henri. And then the French Cycling Federation came back and further disciplined them. Sometimes worse, sometimes years disqualification, sometimes lifetime bans from the race. The Federation also didn't give exact reasons after all this investigating as to why they handed out the discipline that they did. And Henri didn't really like that either. He was quoted as saying later, quote, "The Tour de France is finished, and the second edition will, I fear, also be the last. It has died of its success, of the blind passions that it unleashed, the abuse and the dirty suspicions. We will therefore leave it to others to take the chance of taking on an adventure the scale of the Tour de France," end quote. So he was probably, I mean, he came up with this whole thing. Like all of this was his idea. It was ultimately used to promote a French cycling magazine. That's how it started in 1903. Him being a writer and editor for that magazine, and so he wanted to advertise for that, and so he came up with this cycling race to drum up support for that ultimately. But
how very melodramatic and French is that?
Well, I can only imagine how crazy that sounded. I wish I could have found it.
It has died of its success. I am sad and yet overjoyed all at once. Like, what are you doing? Calm down, my man.
He probably is sad though, but that was like,
oh yeah,
the 1900s were just a different time. I think it would be cool if we just started speaking, 1900s English again. I don't know how to do it, but I think that would be cool. But it had to be sad for him. But ultimately, the 1905 Tour de France would take place, and one of the measures that they took against all the problems that they had during 1904 was they broke the 1905 edition up into 11 stages instead of 6, so that the stages were shorter, and so hopefully the 1905 Tour de France was clearly not worse than the 1904 version, but the 1904 version does still hold the record for the oldest rider who participated. He was 50 years old. Can't even imagine that today without a bunch of amphetamines. And the youngest winner. Cornet was 19 years old when they handed him the title, and no one younger than him has ever won it. And that is the story.
I find it interesting that they went with more stages, shorter stages, because that's the fix, right? Is if you have X number of people that can help you work and administer the race, if you have them spread out over this giant course every day, they can see less than if you have them in this smaller area. So you can catch some of these things administratively without it having to be an accusation and then go find somebody. You saw it happen or you didn't, which leads to less cheating. That's good. I'm also reminded of two quotes as we're going through this. The first seems to be something that's related to Bob Huggins, basketball coach at West Virginia's strategy on fouling, which is that you should just play aggressive defense. And if everybody fouls every play, they can't call them all. And it seems like some of these people were doing this. Like if we're all cheating, they're not going to catch everybody. So, and apparently, allegedly, even the winner cheated, just didn't get caught enough to be disqualified. And then the other quote, obviously from good old redneck racing, is that if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. So these folks that year were definitely trying their hardest to win this race.
They really
in whatever way they could. But yeah, I don't think as a person who would be watching this or trying to follow this in the papers, this would be very dramatic. So it would be entertaining in that way, but ultimately not very sporting at all for this entire event.
No, and that's probably one of the reasons why they figured like this is not what I wanted it to be. This is against everything that this sport should stand for, and they just couldn't. They didn't want it to be that way anymore, and so they ultimately tried it again. And the only other times it has been canceled, I think, are for World Wars. Even during COVID, I want to say in 2020, they just postponed it by a month. They ran the race in August instead of July, and it has happened. And popularity is remains high. I mean, it is an absolute spectacle. If you have never seen it, just watch 1 day of it. Not even a day. You don't even have to watch a whole day. Just like watch how these athletes work. It's poetry in motion. It really is, because they're riding inches from each other on pieces of equipment that weigh 8 pounds, and they're climbing the tallest mountains in France and descending them, and it's absolutely amazing. The fact that the person who shall not be named did it is the only person to do it 7 times and he did it 7 times in a row. Of course, he admitted to cheating later, but 4 others in Tour de France history have 5 titles. And no one has eclipsed that as of this recording. So
not yet.
It is quite a spectacle. If you've never watched it, it is definitely an athletic thing that you should watch at least once in your life. It's really cool. Final thoughts? Anything?
Yeah, I think that I'm glad that they found their way through the drama, and it's kind of like every great sporting event. At first, there's some kinks to work through, and they did. And thankfully, we don't have barricades and nails and strychnine anymore. Even though we got fancier strychnine now, but we don't do it anymore.
They have barricades, except the barricades are along the race course to keep the fans sometimes out. That's the other cool part about watching this, is that the spectators will sometimes they'll create a path up a mountain, like 2 bicycles wide, and they're riding, like people can touch them. Like it gets scary sometimes, but
there was like a pedestrian accident last year or the year before, right? Like where they all got too close and got ran over. It was either that or in the Olympics or something.
There was one in recent history where one of the motorcycles, like one of the officials or TV people, ran over a spectator, like hit a spectator with the motorcycle. But every once in a while, you will get a rider complain about a spectator in particular who might have gotten too close or touched them while they were riding, because they are in the mode. Like, I mean, they are so focused that it's any little thing to throw them off could ruin everything. But I don't know what and about this, I don't know what it was about 1904. That sounds like a heck of a time, and if we did have a time machine,
I'm going there.
That might be where I go. to watch this and the Summer Olympics. The Summer Olympic marathon, to be exact. As a fly on a wall, that would be hilarious. Yes. By the way, if y'all hadn't listened to that, that's the episode you missed, so go back and find it, please. Thank you. And that is what you don't know about the 1904 Tour de France. As always, give us your ideas. We will research them and present them like the glorious students that we are. And follow us on social media, subscribe to the podcast. And until next time, we'll see you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of What You Don't Know About Sports. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review, 5 stars only, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. If you have a great sports story, we want to hear about it. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WYDKAS Podcast, and on our YouTube channel at What You Don't Know About Sports Podcast. All episodes are written, recorded, and edited by us. Stay tuned for the next episode.